We'd like to start this one off by responding to a comment that we got on one of the shorts that was posted.
Yes.
To Lomker's Holler. What is that? Atravotum? That's the name, Atravotum. It was on the YouTube short about like something I had said on the nature of reality being like objective truth. And with it being a YouTube short, obviously it's condensed into just a very short thing, and it just completely takes out of context, essentially, things that I said. And kind of like it simplifies things a bit, because what I was talking about, it definitely was like a simplified. I didn't expand on it too much about what I meant necessarily by it. But he responded with, "I disagree strongly. All of reality as we know and define it is entirely based on our own senses. Good and evil are abstract concepts entirely subjected to whom you ask. Even more concrete things like color is subject to our brain's interpretation of environmental stimuli. You could say, well, at least there's some constants. There are at least some constants there, like interaction of light spectrums on matter, but that's from the perspective our reality is even real and we have figured it out. We could as easily be a computer simulation, and what we are seeing is the rules that govern our reality, but not reality at its highest level. Consciousness as a whole is a very subjective experience, in my opinion. While we agree on some common principles, let's not pretend like that then makes them absolute truth." So I don't believe we're in a computer simulation, and reality probably sets itself up to maybe look like a computer simulation, but I don't think that's exactly what it is. But as far as good and evil are abstract concepts entirely subjective to whom you ask, I really don't believe that that's true. And I believe that was true before I even turned to Christ. So, and the reason why is because things are definitely objectively wrong, no matter who does it, to whom, in what society, at what time period. Does not matter.
There definitely is some things that we can all agree on there. Yeah.
So constants exist outside of our human experience, regardless of our visualizations and interpretations. There is an objective standard that's outside of ourselves, and that is outlined in the Bible. That's why we have to submit ourselves to God's authority, to God's will. And God is the objective standard outside of us, because if it's left up to us, we do some pretty horrific things.
Yeah.
And we justify it based on our own, and that's like, so we're gonna do horrific things and then justify it to ourselves, and then that suddenly makes it okay. That's not real. That doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, there has to be guidelines.
So everything, you can kind of look at it as things in nature tend to build complex systems to organize themselves. You can see this in humanity and bacteria, even in atoms, particles, like they organize themselves
into specific arrangements,
molecules. They do that to create something specific.
Otherwise, nothing would exist.
But something that you can see in humans that you can't really observe anywhere else is that humans are capable of causing suffering for the sake of suffering. That we're able to deliver pain simply because we want to.
We want there to be pain. Yeah.
One of the biggest things, because you can say, animals kill each other all the time. Like, of course, well, that is a part of nature. Animals do kill each other. They kill they kill each other in their own. They kill each other outside of their own.
Right.
But what you see uniquely from humans is that humans will actively destroy themselves. Like a single person will destroy themselves to the core, outside, inside, however, and they will do so because they wanted to.
Right. And they get pleasure out of it.
Yeah,
a lot of times. Yeah.
Pleasure out of it.
Could be, it's hollow pleasure.
I was
at the end.
When I used to work at Domino's, and I remember I was a manager. I was talking with one of my delivery drivers about this thing, and he had brought up the example, because I had said that, and he had brought up the example of like, he's like, well, dolphins in the wild will like toss around pufferfish to get high. And he was like, that's pretty intense for that pufferfish, but the dolphins are just having fun.
Right.
And I was like, well, But that's still what I said. You know, a dolphin will not seek out things simply to destroy itself because it wants to.
Right. It's not, so that behavior it's exhibiting is not necessarily because it wants to harm itself. It's found that it's an enjoyable thing. Hey, if I do this, this is fun. And I think a lot of the suffering that we put on ourselves is that way for a lot of people anyway. It's not all just like, well, I'm doing this because I know it's going to destroy me and I want it to destroy me. There are those people out there.
Yeah, I mean, like, a lot of the time you have people who just eat a lot of sugar and junk food, and they do so willingly, and they're like, oh yeah, I know it's bad for me. Ho, ho, ho.
But do they really know it's bad for them? Like, you hear it's bad for you, but do you really understand how bad it is for you and what it's actually doing every time you put something in your mouth that is refined or has...
well, I think if humans truly understood, then a lot of them would not do it. But there are a lot of people that genuinely just don't care.
Yeah. Well, and we're led to believe that, or we're marketed to anyway, that this is what you want. This is good. Look how pretty this package is. Yeah, buy this, and it tastes good. So it's tough. We're under fire from all directions constantly, and I really believe it's part of an overarching conspiracy against us, you know, because the more divided and beat up we are, the less that we can become aware of what's really going on and not be puppeted anymore.
But that leads me back to the original point that I was making, is that good and evil are outside forces that influence us in our daily lives.
Yeah, it's not subjective. It's not like, okay, well, I think it's okay to choosing my words carefully here. My initial thought was pretty dark, so it's...
I mean, if we want to get graphic, like, just for the sake of argumentation...
Yeah.
Because I was actually thinking of doing that, because there was a great point that
I remember something you shared earlier, the video you were watching. Maybe that's...
Yeah, it was basically a point about absolutes.
Yeah.
And if you believe in absolutes or not. Like, obviously, this person, I don't think, believes in absolutes.
Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, I mean, if good and evil are abstract concepts, subjective to whom you ask, then that doesn't sound like good and evil are absolute.
Let us know, Atravatum, Atravotum. Sorry for butchering your name.
So, is it objectively true to say that rape is wrong? Is there ever an instance where it can be morally beautiful?
Right. I don't. If there is one, I would be interesting to hear someone's perspective on that. I don't see how you could ever reason that. I mean, it's one person forcing themselves onto another person, and they don't want it. It's being forced. It's not. That's wrong. I don't know, but. Maybe that's just my subjective truth speaking, but I would think it's something inside of us that tells us it's wrong. It's not like, well, I think it's wrong. There's a feeling that you get like, ugh, that's wrong. You see that if you saw something like that happening, you'd do something to stop it. Be like, hey, stop. You'd speak up. You'd physically get involved. And that's not something I can control or decide. I've been in instances like that where I've seen someone being taken advantage of, and I didn't stop and think, what should I do here? I just started acting, and it's built inside of us, this, and where does that come from? What is it that's pushing that and guiding us?
If it's all subjective, if it all just doesn't matter, if it's all just dependent upon who you ask, then where do you get the authority to complain? Like, where do you get that?
Right.
Like, if any kind of injustice or transgression is taken upon you, how can you complain about it, and how can it be justified that you're complaining about it? You just have to suck it up and let it happen, because obviously it's good for them.
Yeah.
It's the same thing You know, like, obviously certain people really do think that they're correct in the evil that they do. Like, you could take the communists in Russia and China, and then also you could talk about Hitler. You know, like, they obviously thought that whatever they were doing was like, the best thing that they could be doing in that moment.
Right, and if you think of it as like, well, whatever the consensus is, that's how we determine right and wrong. Well, most people think this is right, or most people think this is wrong.
But where do you get the authority to determine for somebody else what they should or should not do? Because even if there is mass consensus with a population, you still have those few people that are like, well, that is not fair to me.
Yeah, somebody feels wrong about it. And I think a lot of people in those circumstances where it's this consensus that something is actually inherently wrong, but they're going along with it because they're afraid of some sort of lashback. Well, I don't want to be labeled as this, or miss out on this, or get this taken away from me.
There was a great book about that. I can't remember who wrote it off the top of my head, but the book's called Ordinary Men, which talks about the German population in the 1930s and how, like, Hitler was able to just round up everybody.
It's an amazing thing. I mean, he definitely...
Yeah, you're talking about average citizens willingly executing pregnant women alongside of a fence simply for the crime of their genetics.
Right. But they have no control over it. It's like, well, you weren't supposed to exist, and I'm going to pull the trigger because of that reason. And that's just...
Like, how do you as a normal person picture yourself in these types of scenarios? Like, are you the person who would pick up the rifle, or are you the type of person who would go along with everything that's happening?
Me? I've always been
well, anybody really
against the grain. I don't like going along with the status quo. It makes me... something feels wrong about that. I've always wanted to do my own thing, and I think a lot of people have that inside of them, but they're afraid to be an outcast or a black sheep.
I do think a lot of people would say that, though. That they say, like, oh, yeah, I would be the one that's hiding Anne Frank in my attic while all the Nazis were searching the houses and all that type of stuff. But I really do think that if push comes to shove, you would be the 99% that went along with everything else.
It's hard. It's easy to just go along with stuff because you don't have to think or do anything different. It's like, well, that's what we're doing now. Okay, let's do that. Like, look at what happened in 2020 and for the 4 years that followed. Like, how many people were forced to do things that they didn't want to do in those circumstances, at risk of losing their jobs with the getting the poke in the arm, wearing these masks and everything. Like, where did all that come from? What was the point of it all?
And you could even you could bring up taxes as a thing. Like,
Lord.
if there was ever, like, if you took our current tax situation back in the day, like, whole wars were fought over this.
Yeah.
Right? People did not stand for this.
Yeah.
But yet now they just accept it.
Well, income tax originally was established, and they said, oh, it's only going to be for the 1%, and it's only going to be for, a short period of time. It's not something that we're going to implement moving forward. But it's grown exponentially from there. Like, everything's taxed. I saw a recent thing, a breakdown of something. It was like starting with $100, and somebody goes to their barber to get a haircut and pays $100 for it. That barber gets 70 of those dollars, and 30% goes to taxes, or $30 goes to taxes. And then they go out and buy
supplies for the shop.
Yeah, supplies for the shop, and that person that takes that $70 of those supplies, they end up with $40 or something like that. And it just continues down the line until eventually the government has it all back. And I've heard it compared to theft, because it's
taxation.
It's constantly.
But yeah, the current tax situation, it's not even just income tax, but it's like anytime money exchanges hands or you buy something, like a small piece of that goes off somewhere else. And then by the time you get down to it, like, you only have a fraction, like a very small fraction of what you started off with.
At best, I think you have 50% at the end of the day, and that's until you go buy something. And then you're subject to whatever the sales tax may be. That's why it's always good to take advantage of those duty-free places at the airport if you need anything like that. But there is a limit to it, though. I mean, when you're doing just trading with your neighbors or at a farmer's market. I mean, how much of that, I think there's a certain dollar amount that has to be reported, but if it's below that, or is it always across the board, no matter what, the government needs their take?
Well, that's like the best part about cash. When you're dealing with cash, there is absolutely no way to track any amount that's spent. Like, you could go pay 30 grand in something and not have to pay any taxes on it if you had that in cash that nobody knew about.
Right.
But the government tracks everything. The banks track everything, and
Yeah,
they'll find it eventually if you're not careful enough. But there are some people
who give them a reason to pay attention to you.
Yeah, there are some people that they play their cards right. They get away with murder, essentially.
Well, yeah.
Well,
what?
Well, no, it's okay. I lost it.
Get away with murder.
Yeah.
I've heard there's a lot of fear around the concept of cash going away because there's this lack of visibility, and the government wants to, Big Brother, wants to keep eyes on everything and make sure they know what everybody's doing. And if anybody steps out of line, they can, seize their funds, freeze their bank accounts, whatever it might be. But on the other side of that, it works the same way for them. There are things that they're doing that they don't want tracked, that they don't want to be part of whatever that is supposedly coming, the CBDC, the central bank digital currency. But even if that were the case, I doubt that the authorities would subject themselves to such a system. They'd probably have some other layer, just like there is now. The money that we trade hands with, cash money, is not, it's just for us to do that. Like what is actually being used. Good book. I think I may have mentioned it before. The Creature of Jekyll Island goes into the monetary system and exactly how it works and what banks do, how they can create more money, how they lend money and receive money. The payment of loans is how money is being printed, so to speak. When they are loaning money out, that's not actually money that they even have. It's just, they have some of it. That's why it's called fractional reserve banking. There's a fraction of what they're loaning out in reserve, and there's some limit to that, but it's crazy. It's like they only have to have like 10%, maybe even less, of what they're loaning out. And then it all gets paid back and new money is created. But a layer above that, there's maybe they're Federal Reserve notes. I don't remember the exact terminology, but they are these notes that have value that is established by the Federal Reserve. And there's a variety of layers, and this book really goes into it specifically. So if you're interested in that, definitely recommend reading it. It's a lengthy one and goes into super deep stuff. I haven't finished it yet, but I do audiobooks. Recently, I've been reading the Bible. I don't know. It's because I've been spending all this time reading all these other books, and I'm like, well, what about the Bible? Like, I don't.
That's supposed to be like right. All about what we're doing.
And I'm always talking about it, like, man, I wish I knew more about the Bible. I wish I knew more about. Well, read the thing. Just open it up and read it. Like, that's all you got to do. And sometimes, as far as that goes, I get caught up often feeling like, man, I just read all this stuff and I don't even remember any of what I read, but I do remember this little part. Like, okay, at least I got something out of it. And that's the thing to hang on to. It's just like being in the shower. You're in the shower, there's water flying everywhere. Some of the water is not even going to come in contact with you. But the whole point of being in the shower is to get clean. So as long as you accomplish that, awesome. All the stuff that didn't hit you, oh well, you're going to take another shower next time you need to take a shower. But as far as reading and absorbing knowledge, you're going to get something out of it. Don't feel like you're failing if you're not holding everything in. And I do a lot. But
being intentional with what you're learning and reading.
Yeah, and something good, especially with the Bible, before you start, say a prayer and ask to be with help remembering what you need. Like, what do I need out of this? What do I need to see? What do I need in my heart that I'm going to encounter here? And doesn't mean something is going to strike you, you're going to have inspiration, but at least you're opening yourself up to that and being intentional about it. I've been just finished reading through 1st and 2nd Kings. I started 1st Chronicles, and I'm like, man,
I like the Book of Kings.
Yeah, it's great. It's such, the history there is amazing. And I get bogged down with all this, like the begats that you get into. It's like the first, I don't even know. I think I'm in chapter 9 of 1st Chronicles right now, and it's mostly just talking about the lineage and some cities where people lived. And I'm like, why am I reading this right now? What can I get out of this? What can be gained from this information? But if nothing else, it's just amazing that has been preserved, and it's there that you can actually trace the lineage from Abraham to Jesus, essentially. And it's pretty amazing. And I'm thankful that exists.
Yeah, the Bible is a pretty amazing collection.
Yeah, it's a library.
Yeah, a library. 60-some authors, 60-some books, 40-some authors, written over the course of 2,000 years.
It's amazing.
And it's all one linear story. Most of these people had never met each other, nor knew that they existed, and then it was compiled, and this...
That's something I recently heard about. I have to get the guy's name, but my sister was talking to me about this theologian that did a lot of research into the Bible and how truthful it actually is. And he had all these theories about certain things that had been put in and taken out to essentially brainwash us. So I've been wrestling with that recently. It's like, well, yeah, how can we know that what's in the Bible is actually what's supposed to be in the Bible? What was intentionally put for us to absorb the Word of God? And I don't have the exact answer for that. I've seen some pretty good responses, but at the end of the day, I feel like it's not so much about those words. It's about building that connection and figuring out what you personally think and feel, building your relationship with God. Regardless of all of the fine details of it all, it's why are you alive? What are you trying to accomplish with your life? Are you just self-absorbed and want nothing but to destroy yourself, like we were talking about earlier? Or do you actually care and want to see yourself thrive, and maybe you can help other people thrive as well? And I feel like that's what it's about, using the gifts that we have to honor God, to build His kingdom, and to share that with other people. And if we're doing that, then I feel like that's a pretty fulfilling life. But I have to figure out this guy's name. I really want to research his stuff just to understand. I love exploring counter viewpoints of mine just because it kind of reinforces why I think what I think, or it may open something up so that I can understand why I think what I think. So I feel like it's good to explore, but you got to be careful because a lot of that stuff is designed to pull you down, confuse you, and make you doubt. And that is one of the main tools that the enemy has. The devil's constantly trying to plant little seeds of doubt and misery inside of our minds and our hearts to make us feel or think that, well, this is okay, but it's not for me. There's this angst or something inside of you. And whenever you get those feelings, you got to give it to God. And that's something I'm still struggling with personally.
Surrender.
Yeah, surrender. That's always been the biggest stumbling block for me because pride is my biggest downfall, and I think for a lot of people, I'm like, I can do this, I'm gonna handle it.
Yeah.
And I get
how often in our own lives do we even for strong believers, do we end up in a situation where we just can't make heads or tails of anything, and we're just so like down on our luck and everything, and we're praying for guidance and a way out essentially, and then Like God provides, gives you a way out, and then you're going around telling everybody, yeah, I just got out of this funk, or I just got out of this situation.
Right,
Like,
I did it.
I did it. It's all me. But just completely forgetting that you were crying out to God a minute ago to help.
Got to remember to give glory to God, and He's always there. He's always reaching out to us, and we just have to give up and give in. Let go of what your flesh is telling you to do. Listen for His voice. And it's not always going to be clear, but going back to the intentionality, why are you doing what you're doing? What's the point of it all?
Yeah.
And
being intentional is, it's definitely like, we have to learn to trust God. That is one thing, but that doesn't mean we can sit on our hands. It's still,
exactly.
We still have to be proactive in the things that we're doing.
We're all made in His image. At the end of the day,
designed to pull order from the chaos.
Exactly. And we all have different ways to do that, different gifts that we were blessed with in order to create something out of nothing, essentially. Where somebody else may see nothing, you're like, hey, what about this? And some of our gifts may not be so obvious. And that's something that I feel really called to understand and to help people with, to figure out what their gifts are. Because for me, a lot of what I think are my gifts are very abstract. It's not like something like easy to acknowledge, like somebody who's gifted with painting. You could see that, like, oh, look, they have a huge talent for this. And all of us using those gifts and expounding on them, growing them, that is worship. That is the highest form of worship, in my opinion. And to go back to something we've heard from Pastor David Grimes, and I'm not sure if he came up with this or where it originated, but God does not love us equally. He loves us uniquely. We each have a unique way of moving through this life and of honoring Him and building His kingdom. And it has nothing to do with sitting on your hands. If you don't use what you've been given, it will be given away.
Like the servants in the Bible that didn't use their talent.
Yeah, right. There was a guy that had 5 talents, one that had 3, and one that had 1, something like that.
Something like that. The guy that had 5 talents, he doubled it, turned it into 10.
Right.
The guy who had 3 doubled it, turned it into 6. The guy that only got 1 was so afraid of losing it, he buried it and left it there until his master came back for it. And he was like, yeah, I just still have the 1. I didn't get anything back.
Right. So,
but it is going along the lines, like, if you have 5 of something, it's much easier to give 1 up in search of trying to make more out of it.
Right.
Whereas if you only have the one thing, it's understandable how you would be like, well, I just have this one thing. Like, I don't want to lose it. I don't want to.
Right.
I don't want anything to happen to it, because if I lose it, then I'm out and I still can't gain anything. But that's that fear and anxiety that we have to let go of. We have to give it to God, to trust God.
Can't live your life out of fear. You'll just end up wasting everything you have.
You'll make a lot of the wrong decisions too.
Yeah. That's right. Well, I feel like I feel inspired right now.
Yeah?
Yeah, I feel inspired. What do you guys think? What are you called to do? Are you trying to figure it out? Do you want help figuring it out? I would love to explore that with anybody that's willing to talk about it. I don't know how Jordan feels about it, but I
was gonna say, like, keep coming with these comments.
Yeah,
because I love these. I love to be able to see what people think. I love to be able to see if I can respond to them. It's a challenge to me. Like, try to shake my worldview. I dare you.
It helps all of us grow at the end of the day. Being able to share is amazing. And the time in which we live, it's never been easier to have a voice and build a community, and that's part of what my goal with all of this is to help reach out into the world and find some like-minded thinkers and be an impact of positive change in the world. So let's do it. Yeah.
See you next time.
God is good.
Yes.
Prayer is powerful, and we all have the ability to call on His strength. He is our Father, after all. Thanks, Daddy.